Imagine the loudest sound you've ever heard. Now imagine hearing that sound for 5 minutes. The tornado that struck Jarrell in 1997 was, in every sense of the word, dehumanizing. Not only did it take 27 lives, but it systematically erased every trace of them in ways the modern world had never seen. Every aspect of this storm was atypical. It shapeshifted from a thin rope into a massive black cloud of spinning debris. It moved backwards. It nearly stood still, like a blender spinning at 300 miles per hour. It tore the skin off of livestock, peeled asphalt from roads, and went on a killing spree while hundreds of onlookers watched in horror. All of this in an atmosphere that didn't look dangerous enough to produce such a monster. So how did the most unsurvivable tornado ever recorded form beneath such an ordinary sky? What would it have taken to survive, and will we see anything remotely close to this in the future? On May 26th, forecasters were watching Central Texas closely, but not for violent tornadoes, for general severe thunderstorms with large hail, the kind that the southern plains sees every spring. A cold front was draped across central Oklahoma, which would drift southeastward throughout the afternoon, pushing up warm, moist air, creating thunderstorms. These thunderstorms would likely cluster together, creating a mesoscale convective system, or MCS, causing minor flooding as it drifted southeast in the early morning hours of the 27th. With this in mind, the Storm Prediction Center issued a slight risk for the Ozarks to Tallahassee, directly ahead of the storms. And sure enough, late in the day on the 26th, storms erupted in central Oklahoma, racing southeast, forming an MCS. These storms brought heavy downpours and large hail, expelling cool, dry air, which spilled into northeast Texas by the following morning. This outflow boundary can act as a mini cold front or dry line, which can help initiate thunderstorms later in the day if conditions are right. As data came in from atmospheric soundings on the 27th, things changed quite a bit. In central Texas, a cold front was observed drifting through the region, one that would push immense amounts of surface moisture upwards and create thunderstorms. Just above the sweltering surface air was a thick, hot, and dry air mass that once sat over the high plateau of northern Mexico. If this moisture at the surface was pushed upwards into this dry air, it would rise to 50,000 feet in a matter of minutes, creating massive thunderstorms with large hail. With this in mind, the Storm Prediction Center upgraded central Texas to a moderate risk for severe thunderstorms. The question was, would there be tornadoes? While the Jarrell tornado was truly unsurvivable, no matter the preparation, the vast majority of natural disasters you'll ever have to deal with can be overcome with the right planning, preparation, and supplies. Long-duration blackouts, like those seen during the most recent Mississippi Valley ice storm, are some of the most common aftermaths from natural disasters, and this is when people are at their most vulnerable. This is the Anker SOLIX F3800 portable power station, a home backup power system designed for exactly those scenarios. It delivers an incredible 6,000 watts of output and can power several high-wattage appliances all at the same time. It outputs 120 or 240 volts, which means it can run heaters, refrigerators, medical devices, and even washers and dryers that specifically require 240 volts. 2 units can be paired for up to 12,000 watts of power, enough to power your home for 2 weeks. Battery capacity starts at 3.8 kilowatt hours and expands to 26.9 or even 53.8 kilowatt hours with 2 units, which is enough to power critical systems for 2 weeks during extended power outages. It also allows you to stay productive, powering your Wi-Fi router and keeping all of your electronic devices charged. You can monitor and control everything in real time using the Anker app, like the battery level, power usage, and calculate how long your battery will last. In modern severe weather preparedness, backup power is nearly as important as shelter, which is why the Anker SOLIX F3800 portable power station is widely considered one of the best backup power solutions available. Anker is offering a special deal for weatherbox viewers on the F3800 and its bundles. You can find the links in the description below. Don't wait until the next storm hits to try the only backup power solution you'll ever need. While the atmosphere was teeming with energy, there was very little spin. The jet stream, the very thing that causes rotating winds with height, was 300 miles north of central Texas. Looking at a profile of wind speed and direction with height, the winds were rather light and chaotic. Storm relative helicity values were measuring at about 30, which dictates an atmosphere with very little shear or spin. If a tornado were to occur, let alone a violent tornado, it would be a freak occurrence where everything would have to line up perfectly. Nobody could have predicted the series of events that would unfold in the next 3 hours. The storms that moved through Arkansas in the overnight hours had created little ripples in the atmosphere that could be seen on satellite imagery. It's called a gravity wave, and at the top of the wave, or crest, air is forced upwards, resulting in thicker clouds than at the bottom of the wave, or valley. When a gravity wave moves through an unstable atmosphere, it can help initiate thunderstorms. When that atmosphere has significant moisture on the ground and 6,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE above, it's only a matter of time. A small shower appears on radar just west of Waco, Texas, drifting eastward, and then 2 more baby thunderstorms near Carthage and Henderson, also drifting to the east. Looking at the satellite imagery, it's clear the gravity wave passing over Waco is what helped initiate the lone thunderstorm. But notice something else. A clear other boundary existed on satellite within the field of puffy cumulus clouds. In fact, there were 2 of them. This was the cold front drifting through central Texas, as well as a smaller, weaker dry line. Both of these boundaries have the ability to create thunderstorms, and our Waco storm was located very near both of them. As the storms begin to strengthen, another strange behavior was observed. While the cluster near Henderson drifted eastward, the Waco storm began moving southwestward. Well, storms form when surface air rises, and surface air rises when it gets pushed upwards by boundaries. This process gets accelerated when different boundaries collide and merge. And at this very moment, the cold front and dry line were performing what is called a zipper merge. Much like when 2 lanes of traffic narrow into just one, the cold front was overtaking the dry line, creating an increased area of lift that was propagating the storm's new updrafts southwestward. A tornado watch was issued at 12:54 p.m., with a tornado warning 30 minutes later. But the question remained, where was the spinning motion coming from? The winds were fairly light and chaotic aloft. You would expect a consistent change in wind speed and direction with height, yet there was nothing resembling a tornado-producing atmosphere. The answer lies at the surface, where a complex situation was developing. As the storm propagated southwestward, the downdraft, the cold air rushing out of the storm, merged with the cold front dry line merger, creating this distorted, enhanced gust front. East of this gust front, the southerly inflow into the storm was accelerated, causing a spinning motion at the surface. Due to the explosive environment aloft, with 6,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE, and such a large portion of this energy existing near the ground, any spinning air at the surface could get stretched upwards into the storm itself, and could be enough to produce a tornado. The tornadoes would likely be short-lived due to the complex boundaries that would produce them. Tornadoes require a balance of atmospheric forces, and when you have multiple boundaries interacting in such a complicated way, there's typically small windows where that balance can be achieved. It's similar to trying to start an old lawnmower with a bad carburetor. You can get it to run for a little bit, but it keeps shutting off. At 1:21 p.m., the first tornado touched down, a tall, thin rope near Spring Valley, Texas, that was only on the ground for 3 minutes. But shortly after, another tall tornado touched down east of Moody, Texas. And this time, it was apparent that something was very off. This tornado was moving southwestward, the exact opposite direction a tornado typically moves. Consider this: a supercell thunderstorm is oriented in such a way where the northeast side of the storm contains the downdraft, rain, hail, lightning, and high winds. The southwest side of the storm contains the rain-free base, wall cloud, and often the tornado. When the storm moves in a northeast fashion, the thunderstorm acts as a warning. You might not know a tornado is coming, but at the very least, you are sheltered inside away from the heavy rain and hail. When a supercell moves in the opposite direction, there's literally nothing between you and the tornado. No rain, no hail, and oftentimes not even lightning. If you're not paying attention, it could be fatal. But Debbie and Sandy Silvis knew it was coming, and from Willow Grove Road, Sandy took his camcorder out and began filming as the tall twister approached.
It's gonna hit us.
1 mile to their northeast, Bill and Carolyn Slentz knew it was coming as well. Their home was perched on a hill and they had a clear view to the north, watching the growing tornado approach. Their son, Billy, insisted the family hop in their Honda Accord and drive away from the twister's path. With moments to spare, the family took Billy's advice. It was this decision that likely saved their lives. Sandy had the camera rolling as the Slentz family home was destroyed.
Look!
We got Sandy's getting it all on video, but it's tearing some shit up.
It just hit. That's a house!
The house is just all dog around.
It just leveled that house.
All 5 of the Slentz family vehicles were either tossed atop their home or in the surrounding fields. The tornado lifted less than a mile later. This tornado received an F3 rating, but most importantly, showed that violent tornadoes were certainly on the board, even with the lackluster atmosphere. The storm continued propagating southwestward along the merging boundaries, when at 2:26 p.m., another thin cone tornado touched down atop Belton Lake. Beverly Teague took this video from Morgan's Point showing the tornado over the water, intensifying before it moved onto land. It destroyed the marina and several other structures south of the lake, lifting after only a couple miles. By this time, the storm was clearly visible from Interstate 35, and storm chasers, amateur photographers, and news journalists were careening up from Austin to try to catch a glimpse of a tornado. One of these videographers was Scott Guest, who, after being briefed in the KVUE newsroom, headed north with the crew in search of a tornado. And sure enough, another thin funnel touches down from the clouds, dancing around the field somewhere north of Prairie Dell. This was likely a land spout, a spinning vortex that occurs when weak localized rotation from surface boundaries stretches upwards but does not fully stretch into the updraft of the thunderstorm. Scott pulls over, gets out his camera, and films the small tornado toss hay bales, slowly twisting and turning southward. But then, it appears to drift towards the highway, forcing the team to tear down and head north, out of the twister's path. They drive half a mile north to the Bell County rest area, well out of the tornado's path. Scott continues to film the twisting rope as it snaps trees in a field. Wayne Persky was 6 miles to the northeast, working on his family farm, when he spotted the tornado. He drove out to a field in his pickup truck and began filming the twister as it glided southwest. Scott Beckwith was working at Jarrell Farm Supply when, upon getting word of an approaching tornado, ran outside with his film camera in hand. He begins taking photographs of the twisting funnel. But then, something incredible happened that would go down in meteorological history. Over the course of 3 minutes, the singular funnel slowly turned into a massive multi-vortex tornado, which at one point resembles a giant walking amongst the earth with 2 legs and a distorted arm. In some Native American languages, a multi-vortex tornado is referred to as the dead man walking, a reminder that these types of tornadoes are often the strongest seen on planet Earth and should be treated with the utmost respect. But how did this transformation happen? Well, the tornado went from being mostly a land spout, with rotation existing mainly near the ground, to a violent tornado with multiple vortices and that parent rotation extending all the way into the storm's updraft. Right before the Jarrell tornado, the storm's updraft was located very close to the distorted gust front. And when this happens, the speed at which air rises into a thunderstorm tends to increase. Additionally, a small cell had merged with the parent storm right before the transformation took place. These cell mergers can cause increases in both winds rushing into and out of a thunderstorm. and this can generate or intensify a tornado. The only way we'd get a clear answer is from a mobile Doppler radar unit scanning the tornado in close range. Unfortunately, there were no mobile radar units in operation that day, leaving us to only speculate how a landspout became the worst tornado in history. Regardless, there's no debate about what happened next. As the tornado drifted southward, the winds around the vortex increased to over 250 miles per hour. This dramatic increase in intensity happened directly above Chuck Tunn's farmstead on County Road 304, killing multiple sheep and cattle, and tearing the roof clean off of his underground storm cellar. Thankfully, Chuck wasn't home at the time, but you can imagine what would have happened if he was in his storm cellar. The sheer force of the winds acted like an enormous shovel, digging a trench over 1 foot deep into several fields. This dirt was launched into the funnel, giving it a pitch-black appearance. Traffic was at a standstill on I-35 as drivers looked on in horror at something they would never see again. An F5 tornado was less than a mile from the highway. Continuing to grow in size, the black cloud was now 1 mile away from the Double Creek Estates, a neighborhood of about 40 people on the northwest side of Jarrell. The tornado was moving slow enough that residents could watch it approach for several minutes and still have enough time to make a decision. In fact, if they were paying attention, they had almost an hour of lead time, which was enough for the Igo family to get to safety. Or so they thought. When the tornado warning was issued, the Jarrell Fire Department activated the town's emergency siren. Joan Igo, who was teaching at Jarrell High School, along with her 17-year-old daughter Audrey, immediately left for home upon hearing the tornado warning. Larry, the father of the family, closed up his Chevy parts shop 3 blocks south of the school, speeding home to seek shelter with the rest of his family in a central closet. But unbeknownst to them, by rushing back home, the family had now put themselves directly in the path of the monster. To make matters worse, Larry had about 85 parts cars located behind his home that could easily become deadly projectiles if the tornado hit their property. John and Michael Ruiz were also at the school shooting baskets when they decided to head home due to the impending bad weather. But they lived in a trailer, and knowing the dangers of being in a mobile home during a tornado, decided to leave for the Moring family home on their bikes over a mile away. Thankfully, the 2 teenagers made it inside with time to spare. As the black cloud drew closer, Billy LaFrance put his daughter, Kristen, and his wife, Debbie, into the bathtub of their central bathroom. With there being no room for himself, he huddled against the wall and waited for the worst to pass. In a cruel twist of fate, and for reasons not easily explained, the tornado slows down to a crawl, simultaneously growing to 3/4 of a mile wide, now moving at just several miles per hour. The force of the winds is so strong that asphalt is lifted from County Road 305. Minutes later, the dead man walks into Double Creek. The tornado took between 5 and 8 minutes to cross this mile-long stretch, which gives it the forward speed of a brisk walk. But with winds much stronger than 200 miles per hour, homes immediately exploded upon impact. People were lifted into the air, and walls, beds, chairs, televisions, bathtubs, every material that made up these homes was spun around the vortex at incomprehensible speeds for several minutes, breaking into smaller and smaller pieces that became tiny missiles that would effectively sandblast every remaining home in this subdivision until there was nothing left except for a bare concrete slab. In the entire history of recorded meteorology, there had never been an instance where structures were so cleanly and systematically dismantled by a tornado that the resulting debris was just missing. Not a single one of Larry Igo's 85 vehicles were immediately found. Several inches of topsoil was removed from the surrounding yards, leaving thick mud in its wake. The death toll within this mile stretch reached a staggering 27 residents. those whose remains were found were seemingly difficult to identify for reasons that you can infer. Dental records and fingerprints became vital tools to identify the dead. The death toll included the entire Igo family, with the two twins, Paul and John, being at home the entire day. Tragically, the Moring family, including John and Michael Ruiz, did not make it out alive. While the Igo family and Ruiz brothers made the right decisions that followed conventional wisdom, had Larry, Audrey, and Joan stayed at work in downtown, and had the Ruiz boys stayed in their family trailer, all of them would have made it out alive. But then again, those who did survive also followed conventional wisdom. Billy LaFrance's wife, Debbie, and daughter, Kristen, made it through the horrifying several minutes in their bathtub, but unfortunately, Billy did not. He was pulled out of the home as it was being destroyed. The other survivors in Double Creek were sheltered underground in two separate storm cellars that were properly constructed to withstand such extreme winds. Shortly after exiting Double Creek, the tornado began to shrink in a neighboring field and lifted about 1 mile later. The dead man had returned to the sky. As recovery efforts concluded in the coming months and the neighborhood grieved the tremendous loss, the tornado went into the record books with an F5 rating, estimated wind speeds of over 260 miles per hour. But throughout the years, a murmur had turned into a discussion. What makes a tornado cause that much damage? Could the extremely slow forward speed mean that lesser winds, maybe less than 200 miles per hour, yield the same result? Unfortunately, there's no way to tell without some new evidence, maybe a new close-up camera angle that shows the tornado moving through Double Creek. But when a situation like this undoubtedly happens again, there will be high-tech radars scanning the storm, maybe even of the mobile variety, as well as dozens of storm spotters and chasers capturing different angles of the tornado at different times. As for Jarrell, the residents rebuilt their homes and tried their best to heal. New cookie-cutter subdivisions are popping up in the surrounding fields, featuring homes that are poorly built and would be a potential disaster if a violent tornado were to once again move through. The corporations that bought these plots of lands don't care about safety, but thankfully David Cockrum does. He started Jarrell Storm Shelters after experiencing the tornado firsthand, making it his mission to construct affordable and safe storm shelters for those who need them. As for Larry Igo's classic Chevy parts auto shop, his passion for old American cars lives on through the Central Texas Classic Chevy Club, which was founded by Larry in 1979 and still meets to this day. In the center of Double Creek Estates sits a memorial park with baseball fields, a tennis court, and a memorial on which the victims' names are inscribed in stone. 27 trees, one for each person, have been planted around the memorial and will continue to grow for years to come.